Hi, Matt here again for another top albums of a given year. This is the top 50 albums of 1966. I increased it by 10 from 1965. I must have a thought to go back and do 1964 as well, but I guess the temptation to keep going forward will be kind of great. Anyways, if you are familiar with my videos, I've said before with 1966 that the Holy Trinity is Pet Sounds, Blonde on Blonde, and Revolver. I'm putting them in that order, but it doesn't matter what order that you put them in. I've always believed that, and so as I was compiling my list today, and what a pain in the butt it is to pull out all these CDs too. I'm going to stick by that maxim. So I'm saying Pet Sounds is my favorite album of that year of 1966. It is the pinnacle of what Brian Wilson could do. It is the only total 5-star album that the Beach Boys have ever done. I mean, something like Today is really good in Sunflower, but there's filler, you know. Although there's kind of always filler on Beach Boys albums. You kind of expect that. But this is it. This is the Big Daddy of 1966. Brian Wilson, R.I.P. Also working at the height of his abilities was Bob Dylan in 1966. This is the mono CD from the the mono box set. This is the only way, folks, you can get the 1966 LP mix on CD, because from what I've been told, all of the stereo mixes on CD are remixes. This is what you want. So get the Bob Dylan in mono CD set or LP set if you're a vinyl enthusiast, for what I think is his greatest album. And here's my stereo, although I do prefer the mono, Revolver, Beatles. Everyone has their opinion as to what the best Beatles album is. You know, when I was growing up, it was Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. That's the way we saw it in the 70s. It was certainly seen in the 1960s as the height of what not only the Beatles could do, but, with what a rock album could do. That was the climax of the counterculture. Then sometime maybe like in the 1980s, certainly by the 90s, that pendulum had swung towards either Revolver or Abbey Road or, the White Album. It wasn't just so much Peppers anymore. I don't know if this is my favorite Beatles album. I've always said that the White Album is my favorite Beatles album, but I think this is no one was really making better albums than this in 1966. I'm including Bob Dylan and the Beach Boys, just because I rank them as, Pet Sounds, Blonde on Blonde, and Revolver doesn't mean that that's how it is. It's just, that's just my personal, prejudices or biases, whatever you want to, these three albums cannot be beat. Okay, so the real question I had to ask myself was, what was my fourth favorite album of 1966? And folks, it varies. I was real close to saying, the Kinks' Face to Face, or, I don't know, Blues Breakers with Eric Clapton, or Aftermath. But right now, it's Parsley, Sage, Rosemary, and Thyme. I think this is a virtually perfect album. And so is Sound of Silence. But I didn't want to do today what I did a couple days ago when I did my 65 video, where I was cheating and saying, I'm going to include both these albums. I didn't cheat at all. This is my top 50 albums. So Sound of Silence is coming up, but it's not the very next one. This album, though, is folk rock perfection, as is Blonde on Blonde. Folk rock was a big deal in 1966 in terms of LPs. So was garage rock, but garage rock, was a singles medium, really. But anyways, this is perfect. Okay, I did not go with Sounds of Silence as number 5. I went with If You Can Believe Your Eyes and Ears, the Mamas and the Papas. I've always loved this album. It's, as I said in my Mamas and Papas video, my parents had this record growing up. Here's the mono mix. This is the one I like. It's got filler on side 2, but side 1 and the first song on side 2 are so great. I don't care. If it's not a 5-star album, then they never made one, because this is as close as they ever. This is a classic, even though it's got filler. All right? Mamas and papas, if you can believe your eyes and ears. 2, 3, 4. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, that's my top 5. And here is Face to Face. Yes, this beats out any other British invasion era band except for the Beatles for 1966. It beats out A Quick One. It beats out Aftermath. It beats out Sunshine Superman. I think this is another virtually perfect album. I am a Kinks fanatic. I do not believe that they get their due. I think that I love to big up bands I think are, you know, worthy. You'll notice I'm not really going into detail about songs, especially, I mean, I've done a video on every band so far. So, you know, I'm just repeating myself. This is their first classic album. You know, I liked, you know, Kink Controversy, which I included in my 1965, but this is top 10 for 1966. And it's got Waterloo Sunset on it. Oh no, it doesn't, does it? That's something else. It's got Sunny Afternoon. You know, that's almost as good. All right, now I get to Aftermath, and this is the closest I'm gonna get to cheating. I don't care which version that you choose. I prefer the UK, but I certainly grew up with the US. The US is a shorter album, but you know, I think that this is what you want. This was the first great classic even album that the Rolling Stones made. It's the first album written entirely by Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. In fact, they didn't even have that many albums in the 60s that were written by Mick and Keith. Then Between the Buttons, the next one is, and I think that's it. That's it for the 1960s. All right. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6, 7, 8. Here's 9. Donovan, Sunshine Superman. The US version, which came out in 1966. This is another virtually perfect folk rock album, and those bonus tracks totally make it. You want the mono mix, even though it was never released in stereo at the time. Now there's a really good sounding stereo mix on CDs or LP probably. So if you're one of those guys that just doesn't like mono, okay, pick up the stereo mix. But I'm telling you, it was never available in the 1960s. All right, so there you go, Donovan. Nobody seemed to watch my Donovan video, but he was truly great in the 60s. I came close to including one of his 2 1965 albums in my last video, but this one I was not gonna miss. Okay, and rounding out my top 10, right? This is a 6, 7, 8, 9, yeah. Hums of the Lovin' Spoonful. Boy, I love me some Spoonful. 2 great albums this year. I'm going to include both, but this is probably the best thing that they ever did. All their 65 and 66 albums are great. This is probably my favorite though. This is probably, I made a CDR that I played in my car of about 20 something songs that I just compiled myself of the Lovin' Spoonful, which was so good, and I picked just the right sequence that I almost feel like if you guys tell me in the comments, I should type up the titles and put them in a I mean, you know, so you can see them. You can make a playlist on Spotify, because you know, I mean, these guys, you could say that they were a singles band or a song-oriented band, not an LP group, but Sebastian wrote songs which are virtually as good as anybody's. I would say same with John Phillips too. You'll see I put the John Phillips album ahead of this, the Mamas and Papas album. But this is just good old-fashioned, you know, American folk rock, Americana music. There's blues on here. I mean, I can't speak highly enough of the Spoonful. Nope, that was 9. That wasn't 10. Buffalo Springfield. Now, I have not done a Buffalo Springfield video yet. Well, you know, because, you know, they only have 3 albums. But I could do the Springfield and say Poco as well. Poco through maybe the mid-70s. because I already did, you know, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young and the Byrds, and you know, I did Stephen and Neil, but I haven't done a Springfield video yet. This is a classic album, mono mix. That's what you want, guys. 1966. They never got their due. They never sold a lot of records. I don't think this hardly sold anything. And the original pressing didn't even have For What It's Worth. That if you get For What It's Worth, and it is on this CD, it's the second pressing on that, the one from 1967 on, that has, you know, that song. But this original 1966 mono LP did not. It had Baby Don't You Scold Me, I think, in its place. Okay, that's my top 10. 11, I'm finally going to have room for Sounds of Silence. It's only a hair's difference in quality to Parsley, Sage, Rosemary. I mean, look at those songs. I mentioned yesterday in my 1965 video that when Paul did the Paul Simon Songbook LP in 1965, that a lot of the songs on that album he re-recorded with Art for this album, and some for Parsley, Sage. So you might think that he was just, you know, like repeating himself if you were hip to his previous year's album. But let's be honest, he does them better here in the folk rock vein than he did with the solo acoustic troubadour vein of the, you know, 1965 LP. This is another classic, folks. Another classic. All right, it was 11, 12. Let's freak out. Here's my Frank Zappa Mofo Project Object, where you get the original mix of Freak Out. Here is something that I Xeroxed off a long time ago. I think I showed this on my Zappa video. That's what the album looks like. All right. Really needs the mono mix on CD, but you can't get it. You just get the stereo mix. It's okay. This is, you know, Zappa's great in stereo too. Okay, this is not the first double album. It came out the week after, I believe, Blonde on Blonde. So that's the first Rocks double album, not you know, lots of, you know, jazz had double albums before that. Okay, so 12, 13, Da Capo. Da Capo has a really mediocre side 2 where it's Revelation, but side 1 is so good. And again, I'm not going over all those songs. I did a love video. It's so good. It's like 1965's Having a Rave Up with the Yardbirds. That one album side puts it firmly on my list. So does side 1 of Da Capo. All right, I believe this is 13, all right? All right, 14. 13th Floor Elevators, the psychedelic sounds of the 13th Floor Elevators. Mono, you want this in mono, folks. Did my Elevators video, hardly any of you guys watched it. This is garage rock, this is psych rock. It is just outstanding rock, period. You know, you got Rocky and Tommy and the other guys, and it's almost like a concept LP for how to be a head, an acid tripping head in 1966. Even though the songs were not written that way, the way that Tommy describes them on the liner notes on the back, it makes you think that the album was written that way. But, you know, what a classic. What a classic. All right. 5. So what is this? This is 14? 50? I don't know. The Monkees. First Monkees album. You know, I know some of you guys looking at this going, that's just bubblegum, Matt. Listen to the record. These are all really good songs. You know, this combination of Americans and Brit, and it's totally Beatles influence, Beatles film influence, like Hard Day's Night and Help. And it's a TV show, and you know, they've got writers writing for them. And on this album, they're not even playing. I mean, you might have maybe Peter or Michael strumming the occasional guitar, but mostly this is session pros, you know, Wrecking Crew probably. But who cares? This is a great album. You know, throw on some of those old Monkees videos, get that Blu-ray set that has them all. Throw these albums on. They're all good. They're all good, folks. Every Monkees album from the Peter Tork era, especially through 68, is definitely worth your time. All right. All right, this is what, 16? Lost track. I'll type up all these, I'll make my list and put it as the first comment so you can read the list, same as I did in my 1965 video. This is Blues Breakers with Eric Clapton. I'm gonna do a John Mayall video, at least get his 60s albums out of the way, because he was certainly more hit than miss. This is still my favorite. I know that there are people who are anti-Clapton who are gonna go for whatever, you know, A Hard Road with Peter Green, or Crusade with Mick Taylor, or, you know, one of those 68 or 69 albums where John came to Los Angeles, all of which are great, guys. I will tell you that. But this is the one that turned me on to John Mayall. You know, he's got well, that's John, that's Eric, that's Huey Flint, I think, on drums, and John McVie, who would later go on to Fleetwood Mac on bass. It's awesome. Awesome. All right, 1966, Clapton sounds like Clapton, you know, more so than he did in the Yardbirds. Fifth Dimension, when I did my Birds video, I guess this is 17, I said this could possibly be the first real psychedelic album. That before this, you know, albums had elements of psychedelia in them, but, you know, I think enough songs on here, because it's still folk rock. It's folk rock, you know, through the prism of psychedelia. There's enough psych on here, you can call it a psychedelic album. I mean, it's got 8 Miles High, which is one of the primo psych songs ever. Even though, you know, the Yardbirds predated, Shapes of Things comes out before 8 Miles High. Okay, 18, I guess. Jefferson Airplane Takes Off. This is a really good record. It didn't sell anything. It doesn't have Grace Slick on it, but this is really the emergence of the San Francisco bands. I know in my last video I did in 65, I had the Beau Brummels Volume 2, but the Brummels weren't really part of this whole, as you can see, barely, you know, ballroom, Avalon, Fillmore West, you know, kind of psych dance hall scene, because they left before that really, they left San Francisco before that really started. But the Airplane were firmly entrenched. I mean, Marty owned the Matrix. That was a club that bands played in, and this is really the start of that. You had the We Five before this too, and Country Joe and the Fish released an outstanding EP this year. Got to do me a Country Joe show too. But in terms of LPs, this is the San Francisco LP of 1966 that you need, not Beau Brummels 66, which is all covers. All right. I don't know if I prefer the mono mix. I probably prefer the stereo mix. This is the stereo mix. But I had the old mono CD, and I think I probably might prefer the stereo mix. Fresh Cream is 19. Fresh Cream, nothing sounded like this at the time. This is the DCC Steve Hoffman version. It's in stereo. I probably prefer the mono. This is the American version, but it doesn't really matter which one you get. They're all great. This one's got Spoonful, Wrapping Paper, and Coffee Song as bonus tracks. They're all good. But this, because it was released at the tail end of 66, it really is like a late 60s album. It doesn't sound like the mid 60s, the British invasion type years of 64, 65, and 66. This is almost the beginning of Psychedelia, although they would get more psych than this. This is still basically like a hard rock and kind of blues album, where, you know, they were doing that post Yardbirds, pre Led Zeppelin, pre Jeff Beck group. You know, Cream was really a forerunner of that. The Jimi Hendrix Experience, of course, were doing the same thing as Cream, but Cream released a whole album in 66, whereas the Hendrix Experience just released 145. So Cream got the jump on Jimmy. And I can't have Cream right there without putting the Yardbirds. This, everyone calls this Roger the Engineer now because of the name of the illustration. We called it the Yardbirds when I was a kid. In fact, I had the American version where it was called Over, Under, Sideways, Down, but when I got the import, it was, you know, Yardbirds. I'm pretty sure that's what it said on the spine too. There's my mono CD. I put it, you know, so close to Fresh Cream that they're basically the same in terms of quality, right? This is Jeff Beck at his peak. You know, that's Clapton, and with the Blues Breakers, 66 was Clapton at his peak too. If you get this CD, this mono CD, you get Happenings 10 Years Time Ago and Psycho Daisies as bonus tracks. You get the album in mono and stereo. I mean, you can't go wrong with this. Probably the Yardbirds' best album. Everyone says it is. And that's my top 20. All right? That's my top 20. Let's move on to 30 through 40. 2, 3, 4. I'm going to take them off 5 at a time so I don't lose track. Here's number 21. Ba-ba. A quick one. While He's Away. It's a great album. I do, as I said in my Who video, I do prefer My Generation and Sell Out more than this, but this is still great. It almost made my top 20. I'm not going to say this is better in mono. I've got the mono mix, but the stereo sounds fine to these ears. There's a bit distortion on the mono mix. I do prefer My Generation in mono and probably Sell Out too, but not so much this one. So feel free to just get this stereo CD. All right. Okay. The Seeds. I'm perhaps rating this album too high because it's a garage rock album. There's filler on here, but this is representative of garage rock in '66. There were so many great garage rock albums. I will have a few more. I might as well tell you now some of the ones I didn't make. I didn't make my top 50. There was 3 Paul Revere and the Raiders albums in '66, but I couldn't pick my favorite one because none of them were as good as this. I had Midnight Ride in my hand, but it didn't quite make the top 50. There was Spirit of '67 toward the end of the year, and there's Just Like Us in the beginning of the year. All good, but all of them filled with filler. This has filler too, but even the filler's good. And they had a unique and original sound. This is the whole album in mono with bonus tracks, lots of bonus tracks. You even get Daisy May, which was a 45, or the B-side of a 45. Anyways, The Seeds. 21, 22, here's 23. Never discussed these guys before. Then along comes The Association. Kurt Butcher, is that how you say his name? I've never heard the name pronounced online, and when people say it to me, I can't remember how they say it, so I'm just gonna say Butcher. He's one of those, you know, happy, there's a word for it, that kind of sweet pop, happiness pop, I forget what it's called, anyway, sunshine. People usually pick the Millennium as the pick of what he did, but he just produced this album. He wasn't part of the band, but I think this is a great record. In fact, of that sunshine pop, did I finally get it right? Sunshine pop kind of genre. This is my favorite album. I'll take this over the Millennium's Begin any day. All right, there you go. Mono mix, Association. 2, 3. Here's 24. I could not find a Phil Ochs CD of In Concert, so I'm just using this old CDR that I have, and I didn't even bother to print out a color, you know, LP cover. But this is probably my favorite Phil Ochs album. It is not live. Phil Ochs in concert. He was too shy to record himself doing this, or he did and he didn't like it. So this is just him in the studio going over the same songs that he did for this concert, and they're great. You know, Love Me, I'm a Liberal, or whatever. Definitely a standout. But yeah, I had a Phil Ochs album on my 65 show last time. I got a Phil Ochs album in my 66 show. All right, 25. My favorite Otis Redding album. Complete and Unbelievable, the Otis Redding Dictionary of Soul. My. I do prefer this one to Otis Blue, but not by much. I'm reevaluating Otis Blue. But growing up, yeah, this was my favorite Otis album. You want this in mono, of course. All right, that's 25. Here's 26 through 30. Paul Butterfield Blues Band. Here's my gold disc of East West. This is my favorite Paul Butterfield album. Some of Mike Bloomfield's finest playing. If it just had the song East West alone, which is like 13 minutes of glorious jamming in an Eastern modality, this would be a great album. But the rest of it kicks ass too. Mary Mary's on here, which Mike Nesmith wrote and the Monkees later recorded. All right, it's 26. 27, my second Lovin' Spoonful album, Daydream. It really is almost as good as Hums. All right, tons of good songs. It would just take me too long to go over all the songs on all these CDs, so I'm already almost at the point, lengthwise, that my 1965 video was, and I've got so much more to go. So, Daydream, all right? 9:30. Here's 28, The Fugs. The Fugs, this is their second album. I had an album in 1965. I have an album here in 1966. I love this early stuff. Morning's on here, which Richie Havens later covered. All right. Love. It's 29. Not as good as Da Capo, but you know, this is a solid garage rock album. It's, you know what, this is probably better than the Seeds, even though I put the Seeds higher, because I don't only see Love as a garage rock album or a garage rock band. You know, this is early. There's a little bit of psych in here, and not as much as on Da Capo, but you know, that's as the music was changing, so was the band. I mean, Arthur Lee was special. All right, that's 29. For 30, the last Year of the Animals gave us Animalization. Now, they had 3 albums this year, all with similar titles. I will have one more after this. And you know what? I really considered putting in Best of the Animals, which came out in '66. That's the album I had growing up. That's what turned me on to the band before I got all their discography. But see, there was any number of greatest hits albums that I could have shown you. Like I've already shown you Aftermath, but you know, Big Hits, High Tide, and Green Grass. That's a great album. That could have been on here, because that contains. And it doesn't matter whether you get the American or the UK versions; they're both great. Because that contains songs that weren't on any of their previous albums. You know, so. But I didn't go with Best of the Animals. I went with 2 of their actual albums, and you know, to further hear me talk about these albums, watch my Animals video. All right. And was that it? That was 30? Oh, that was quick. That's 30. All right. Here's the next 5. 31. The Small Faces. Small Faces, 1966. Did my Small Faces show the other day. You guys seem to like it more than you liked my Rod Stewart with the faces. This was Small Faces and Humble Pie. So anyways, really cool stuff. Mod, that's 31. 32 is the Exciting Wilson Pickett. I couldn't find my little Wilson Pickett box of all of his Atlantic albums, but this is my favorite one. This is my favorite Wilson Pickett album. I'd love to do a Wilson Pickett show, but you guys didn't even watch my Otis Redding show, so I don't know whether I should continue in the R&B vein. My Aretha Franklin show did okay, and my Marvin and Stevie shows did really well, but that's Motown in the 70s. This is a great album. All right. 2. Tim Hardin, the first one. Second one's really good too, but that's a different year. You know, this Tim Hardin, he was one of the preeminent singer-songwriters of the mid-'60s, influenced a lot of people. He was one of those, Sons of Dylan, which I'll get to at least one more in this. Like Phil Oakes was one of his contemporaries. I think Tim Hardin probably came after that, but possibly not. You might consider Tim Hardin and Tim Buckley, whom I'm going to show, to be contemporaries of his, but I don't think so. I'm going to say that they're Sons of Dylan. Anyways, this is a great album. Since I'm never probably going to do a Tim Hardin show, what's on here? My Promises, Green Rocky Roads, Reason to Believe is on here. That's his most famous song. Yeah, Misty Roses. We need to, hang on to a dream. Yeah, this is probably better than his second album, but I don't know. It's been a while since I played him. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Here's 34. Mamas and the Papas. Not as good as If You Can Believe Your Eyes and Yours, but it's really good. Again, it's folk rock par excellence. The folky thing was still going strong in the mid 60s. It was definitely a leftover from the folk era of the late 50s and the early 60s. But without folk music, a lot of rock would not sound anything like this. Okay, and this is number 40. So 20, 25, 30, 40. Already lost my way. Blues Project, Projections. Al Cooper was in this band. This is a New York band. I even tried to get one of their posters once, one of these psychedelic posters. I'm never going to do a Blues Project show. Oh, I might do an Al Cooper show. I don't know. But I Can't Keep From Crying is a classic. Steve's song is good. Two Trains Running. Wake Me, Shake Me. I think they did that at Monterey. Flute Song is one of their best ever numbers. So this used to be considered, this had a high reputation when I was a kid. Now you never hear about it. One of those things that's just kind of been lost. And, wow, I'm losing my way here, guys. 20, 30, this is 35. All right, we've done 35. Okay, 36, Tim Buckley. I'm a big Tim Buckley guy. I will definitely do a Tim Buckley show. He was a Los Angeles, he was really from Orange County. Died in the 70s. Most of his albums are good. Some of them are great. This album is underrated. He reaches astral planes like Van Morrison does on this album, on some songs, not a lot. I really can't. Look at those titles. Can't read them. They're much better. Yeah, Can't See Your Wings, Song of Musicians, Strange Street Affair, Aren't You the Girl, Song Happens Every Time, Song for Janie, Good for My Soul. I can't remember the one where it's just incredible though, because this is folk rock, but this is back when Buckley was content to be considered a folk rocker. My favorite album is going to come along for 67 of his, and I'll wait until we get to there to talk about it. But this is a strong debut. All right. Okay. Coltrane. I did not show you guys the LP cover of A Love Supreme for the 1965 video. Likewise, I cannot show you because I just didn't feel like printing it out. The LP cover for Ascension. It is on the Impulse Years box set. I recommend it. All the Impulse albums are worth your time. I've got the Atlantic albums on a box set, and they actually do reproduce the LP covers on CD, but not here. Ascension's, it's difficult music, guys. It's avant-garde. It doesn't sound like previous Coltrane, but it's still John, He would die the next year, so he took his music, I think, as high as he was going to take it in 66, and it's too bad we couldn't see what he would have done with this. I think he was ahead of Miles Davis at this time. I will have a Miles album on this show, though, right today. And if you're going to get Ascension, you might as well get Meditations. That's another album he did in 66, So if I was going to do ties like I did on the last show, I'd have Ascension and Meditations. But I really want to promote Ascension right now. All right? Okay. 4 and More. Miles Davis. This is a live album, 1966. Recorded a few years earlier. He took the slower songs and put them on the My Funny Valentine album. This is the faster stuff. It's from the same show though, or shows, I don't remember. But 4 and More, here's the Mo-Fi version. Live in concert. All right. Sergio Mendes and Brazil, 66. I showed you 2 Herb Alpert albums in 65. I'm showing you this one, which Herb Alpert presents, but this is a really cool album too, with the classic Mas Que Nada as the opening track. But I was watching this Ralph Bakshi movie last night. It was Heavy Traffic, and they used Sergio Mendes's version of the Simon and Garfunkel song. God, what was it? I can't remember what it was now. Was it? Well, anyways, it was a Simon and Garfunkel number, and they used that as a reoccurring musical motif in the Bakshi film. But anyways, that's a great album right there. Okay. Okay, this is the last 10, right? So this would be 49. A Web of Sound. Did my seed show already? This is their second LP of 66, more classic garage rock. I will say, as I said on that show, that Up in Her Room, which is 14 and a half minutes, goes on too long. It's a better 45 than it is an LP cut, in my estimation. Trim that down by about a third, and it's a great song. It just chugs along too long for this record, but it's good enough. This is the garage rock sound of the Supremes, just starting to kind of sort of go psych toward the end of 66. All right. Here's my last top 10, right? 2, 3, 8, 9. Yeah, so that was my top 40. The Young Rascals was 41. Guys, I've had my Rascals CDs on this table that I do my shows on for over a month now, maybe 2 months. I just haven't been in the mood to do a Rascals show. Maybe this will put me in the mood. Here's our first album. It's very good. All right, I won't go into detail because I will do a Rascals show. This is in the box set where you get the mono and the stereo mix, I think. Fairly sure. Let me look. No, it doesn't even say. Oh well. Pretty sure you get mono and stereo though. All right, that's 41. 42, Black Monk Time. Told you I was gonna have more garage rock. Well, I did with A Web of Sound. Black Monk Time. These guys were American servicemen in Germany. They recorded this album. I don't think they ever made another album. Or if they did, I don't know about it. But this is a classic garage rock album. Never gonna do a show on the Monks, so Monk Time is great. Shut Up. I Hate You. It's almost punk, right? Drunken Maria. Blast. I mean, it's very good. Very good. Check it out. Check it out. That's 42. 43, another classic Blue Note album. Wayne Shorter's Speak No Evil. Guys, I could have inundated you guys with jazz albums, but I know this is primarily a rock show, so, you know, I was very selective as to what jazz that I'm showing you. But, so I got a little Miles, I got a little Train. Gotta have a Blue Note album, though, and this is what I'm gonna have to represent 1966. 2, 3. Them Again is 44. Not quite as good as the Angry Young Them, but it's still really good. This is still raw, you know, Van Morrison, Belfast, Irish guys, you know, the personnel changed. But, yeah, I like this stuff. All right, my second Animals album, Animalism. Frank Zappa produced one of these songs, the first one, I think. Watch my Animals show for further conversation. It's good. A lot of covers, though. These guys always had a hard time coming up with original material, but they did those covers well. You know, they didn't have a Mick and Keith to pull them out of that, or a John and Paul. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 left. So this is 46. Now, the Leaves album I want to show you is Hey Joe. I didn't bother to Xerox off the title. If you just get this CD, The Leaves Are Happening Best, The Leaves, you get the entire Hey Joe album, including, you know, different mixes or different versions of the song Hey Joe. But this is a really good garage rock album. Some of these songs even could pass for folk rock, you know, since I'm never going to do a Leaves show. Dr. Stone, Just a Memory's good. Girl from the East. Words. I think that's one out the Monkeys did, right? Too Many People. Yep. Hey Joe. I mean, yeah, it's solid. All right, I showed you a Bert Jantz album yesterday that I could not find. It was Bert Jantz. Found my Bert Jantz CDs today. Isn't that funny? Jack Orion, another album that Jimmy Page pilfered some of the licks to for Led Zeppelin, but that's all right. If Bert can forgive Jimmy, so can we. Another solid folk album. You know, Bert would, not too long after this, would form, you know, Pentangle. That's a great group too. I really like English folk rock, you know, Fairport Convention and Steel Ice Band and Incredible String Band, you know. But Bert Jantz, Jack Orion, strong folk album. Okay, just much like the Leaves, this is the Blues Magoos. They do print the album covers on here. If you get this, it's 3 albums on 2 discs, the Blues Magoos. Psychedelic Lollipop, that's the one that I'm showcasing today for 1966. Electric Comic Book and Basic Blues Magoos, those are their 3 albums, remastered. I wish that they were in mono, but they're not. But, you know, this is good garage rock, psychedelic garage rock for 66. You know, there's a lot of filler on here. You know, we are getting to the top 50. But, you know, it's got We Ain't Got Nothing Yet. That's one of the great garage rock songs of all time. That riff, which came from James Burton's Summertime playing on the Ricky Nelson song, Summertime. And then Deep Purple would later use that riff for their song Black Knight. So anyways, get this one. Well, get these 2 discs, this one little purchase here, and you get all 3 of the Blues Magoos albums. Pretty good garage rock. I'm also going to include, as 49, the Blue Things. Now, you may not, you know, you may look at this and go, why? He chose the Blue Things, but not, you know, none of the Paul Revere and the Raiders albums? Yeah, because you guys know who Paul Revere and the Raiders are. Do you know who the Blue Things were? They never had a hit. You know, they're like a Midwestern band. I think they're from the Midwest. You can look about them or read about them. I first read about them in one of Richie Unterberger's books on folk rock, although I wouldn't really call them folk rock. This has their entire debut album, their only album, and then various 45s. This could be all that they released. I don't know. But pick it up if you like, you know, unknown but pretty cool American garage rock bands from the mid-60s. And that's 49. For my last one, getting ready, The Temptations. I had a Miracles album in my 65 show. I was either going to show this or the Supremes, I Hear a Symphony. I had a Supremes album yesterday. I'm having a Temptations album today. The Temps, I've never had a 5-star album. I was thinking last night as I was thinking what to include in my list, what is the best Temptations album? I don't know. They had a lot of good ones without having any classics. I mean, even going back earlier in their career, pre-66, that one where they sing Smokey Robinson tunes is good. The Psychedelic albums are good. You know, Cloud 9 is pretty good. You know, some of their early 70s albums are good. So I don't know if I have a favorite Temptations album. And their greatest hits album from 66, that's essential. In fact, I probably should have just Xeroxed that off and shown you that but that would be a way better album than just top 50. I didn't I didn't have any greatest hits albums in my list today, did I? Right? Because I mean, like I said, I could have had, you know, big hits, High Tide and Green Grass. I could have had Best of the Animals, you know. But I decided just today to leave off compilations because there were enough good records released in '66 to at least come up with the top 50. And I could, you know, I could have gone higher, but I can recommend all of these albums. So that's Matt, 45 minutes. That's my top 50 for 1966. Until next time.